It's not a game, it's a rich thing.
Lakota tribes inhabited two rich wildernesses. Both were stolen. But the people resisted. The Lakota tribe of the Sioux people are vivid in the world's imagination as buffalo hunters and warriors who fought the U.S. Calvary from horseback in feather bonnets on the Great Plains and Wild West. It may be a surprise to learn the Sioux were first woodland people who lived farther east in the Great Lakes region. The Lakota people and their Sioux cousins are survivors of one of the worst historical events in the Americas and the Caribbean. European colonists arrived in the 15th century, and soon they began stealing land and killing Native Americans, both intentionally and through the spread of disease. But the three Sioux groups, the people who speak Lakota, Dakota, and Nakota, fared better than some Native groups, and they still survive. Some Native American tribes did not survive and are now known only in legend or from archaeological evidence, though the Sioux were pushed out of their ancestral homelands around the Great Lakes. About 170,000 of them now live on reservations in the U.S. states of North Dakota and South Dakota. Lakota history. Little is known about Lakota tribe history before the 17th century because the Sioux didn't have written language, as far as we know. Archaeologists and anthropologists say the Sioux in Lakota lived around the Great Lakes hunting, gathering and farming. They called themselves the Oceti-Sakowin Nation and came together as a nation, or tribe, around the 13th or 14th centuries. Then Cree and Ojibwe tribes, who themselves were displaced in the east, pushed the Sioux west in the 17th century. Some Cree and Ojibwe warriors had firearms that they obtained in the French fur trade, so the odds were stacked against the Oceti-Sakowin. Lakota Sioux buffalo hunting economy. The Lakota tribe and the other Sioux groups then moved onto the plains and began hunting buffalo. The Lakota or Teton tribe moved the farthest west of all the Sioux people and lived in the area just east of the Rocky Mountains and somewhat in the mountains. The three main Sioux groups became more differentiated culturally in the vast space of the American West. They had been more homogeneous in the Great Lakes region earlier in their history. A brief history of the Lakota and Dakota peoples says buffalo became the basis of their livelihoods. When they entered the plains, they acquired horses and hunted and ate buffalo and used the hides, bones and tendons for housing, clothing and to make implements and tools. The Middle Sioux settled along the Missouri River by 1750. The Lakota-speaking Teton Indians were farther west, in the Black Hills and what we now call the states of Montana, Nebraska and Wyoming. Around the early 1800s, the Sioux tribes lived apart long enough that their politics and cultures differentiated so much they were divided into Eastern, Middle, and Teton, Western groups. The U.S. government considered the lands the tribes lived on to the west of Minnesota to be of little value, mere wastelands. But everything changed when gold was discovered. Then settlers rushed in. The lands promised to the tribes were taken back and their territory became smaller and smaller. Lakota traditions of war changed. The Lakota way had been to not kill in battle. As the website states, it is important to understand the main object of Plains Indian warfare was never to acquire land or to control another group of people. Plains Indian warfare focused on raiding other tribes' camps for horses and acquiring honors connected with capturing horses. In these raids, very much like contests, men sought to outsmart the enemy and gain individual honors by counting coup, or striking the enemy with the hand or a special staff. Plains warfare emphasized outsmarting the enemy, not killing them. With the advent of the horse onto the plains, warfare traditions became institutionalized among tribes. This style of warfare, described by one author as comparable to a rough game of football, changed dramatically after encounters with the U.S. Army in the 1850s. For a brief history of what happened to the Sioux people in general, see this Ancient Origins article. Sitting Bull, an honored Lakota leader. Slain. Perhaps the most famous Lakota person known to history was Sitting Bull, who valiantly fought the encroachment onto his people's land, the suppression of their culture and the outright decimation of his people. Sitting Bull fought with Red Cloud, another famous Lakota man, in Red Cloud's War from 1866 to 68. In the later Great Sioux War of 1876, and at the Battle of the Little Bighorn, Custer's last stand, an Indian agent in the employ of the U.S. government shot Sitting Bull during a botched arrest in 1890 on the Standing Rock Reservation. The settlers thought Sitting Bull was involved in the ghost dance movement, which tried to invoke the native savior. The mysterious Lakota tribe gods had Sitting Bull time to pray to the Lakota savior before his death. He might have prayed to Wakantanka. A wonderful webpage, a Lakota pantheon, tells about this mysterious being or force Wakantanka, great mystery power, often designated by non-Indians as the Great Spirit. In a certain sense, Wakantanka is the supreme power of the Lakota universe. The term has a double meaning. Technically, it refers to all the spiritual powers of the universe, as if assembled together around a council fire. The spirit underlying Wakantanka itself is Inyan, who caused all things to be by sacrificing his own nature, and thereby infusing all things with his nature. Wakantanka can be addressed directly in prayer and ritual, but his influence within the world is diffused throughout his elements and aspects. A Lakota pantheon has brief synopses of many Lakota tribe gods, beings, and creatures and is well worth a read. The Pantheon webpage states that of all the Indian tribes, Lakota culture has seized the imagination of many in a way that few other tribes have managed. When people think of Native Americans, they often imagine natives in feather headdresses, on horses fighting the U.S. cavalry or hunting buffalo, as the Lakota did on the Great Plains of the American Midwest and West. Also, they tend to remember some of the most famous native leaders from the Lakota tribe: Sitting Bull, Crazy Horse, and Black Elk.